Hey folks, I was short an episode this week, so I asked the guys over at the Cellar Door Skeptics if it would be cool if I used the audio and video from my appearance on their show. If you want to check that out, they also recorded an extra half hour or something after I had to leave, so make sure to check out their channel. It's the Cellar Door Skeptics. I'll put some links in the show notes. And, enjoy the episode.
4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We have a guest that we've been teasing on the show joining us tonight. And his name is the Skeptical Leftist, or as others know him, his name is Cory Johnston. And I'm going to say Cory Johnston only because I don't know if it's supposed to be Johnston or Johnson, and I didn't ask before the show, and because everybody knows I have the best words out of all the words on the podcast, we're going to go with it. And then we'll tweak it later on. But tonight is going to be a fun night. We get to talk about Canada for the first hour of the show. Hannah is not able to join us tonight due to a family commitment with his wife and daughters. So, Hannah has the night off, but that's okay because we have another amazing host, and his name is Buddy the Elf. Welcome to the show, Buddy. It never gets old, man.
No, it really doesn't, does it? Ever.
Anyway, so we have a great episode lineup tonight. We have our guest here, Cory Johnston. Is it Johnston or Johnson?
It's Cory Johnston. So There's a T there.
I just want to make sure. Well, because it could be a Canadian thing where it's silent. I don't know. I have no idea.
So there are great silent T's.
Look, there's a lot of things in Canada land that I am not a privy to, but I could tell you I appreciate them more than I do my own nation 90% of the time.
That's what you appreciate.
Yes, it is. Especially that show. That's probably my favorite show now in the whole world, actually.
Every Canadian actually knows people that are those characters on some level.
And that's probably what makes it really good. And like in my world, I used to work on a farm a little bit, but they were nobody drank. It was all like an ultra Christian, like organizational thing. Like my boss used to preach to me, and all that type of thing. And then I worked at the farmer's market. So I would pick tomatoes or different things with him during the summer. And then on Saturdays and Wednesdays, I would go actually sell the produce, and I had to help set everything up and blah, 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 blah. But there is stereotypes like the Dans of the world. We had a Dan that worked with us without the accent, but it's just kind of funny because it's great that your guys, your culture up there at least has that difference. And then there always seems to be a tinge of humor for the most part. At least that's what I can see. Even if you look at your politics, there's a tinge of humor in your politics. I mean, you have a very good-looking prime minister, but is he really the prime minister that anybody wants? I don't know. Hopefully you'll tell us.
I mean, if you compare him to other leaders, you'd rather him because you're not worried that he's going to try to incite a riot. So there's that.
Yeah. But anyway, so thank you so much for joining us tonight, Cory. It's great to have you on. I heard before the show you are on 3 podcasts. I was familiar with one, but not the other 2. So if you want to give a quick intro so everybody knows who you are, where they can find you, and kind of what you do, that would be amazing.
Sure. Yeah. I run my solo show is called The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist, and I basically, it's a combination of an interview show / my own personal thoughts. I talk to people to try and spread progressivism, leftist politics, and critical thinking. And then I've got a very local show from Many People's Strength. It's a Saskatchewan politics podcast with my friend David Richards, who is not a leftist but is a progressive. And then I've got Skeptarchy, which I do with Kevin Watson, Del on Earth, and Eric Standing on the Road, or Eric Ray Standing is how he's known on the show. And basically that's like just a panel show. We talk about various topics from Canadian and American perspectives. So
awesome. And I think that's I think that's kind of the crux of it. You're like kind of covering a spectrum, for the most part. It's funny when you say the difference between a leftist and a progressive. And so you got to tell me in Canadian terms, right? And I hope that's not offensive, but in Canadian terms, what's the difference between a progressive and a leftist? Like, is it the exact same as it is in America, or is there like a big distinct difference?
I think you would have to ask, like, if an American leftist would have the same distinctions that I have. If you are still a capitalist, then you are a progressive. If you're a leftist, you're an anti-capitalist.
Okay. All right. So in America, it's a little different because, your leftist here is a generic term that is used for anything, right?
Oh, okay.
It does not specifically mean anti-capitalist. So for example, if I'm probably the more liberal of the hosts on the show per se, I'm pretty much like a social anarchist. I fall in that bottom left quadrant pretty aggressively. Whereas Hannah is like a democratic socialist. So, I guess I'm the leftist, but in America, everybody goes, he's a leftist too. And all of you, everybody in here would be leftist. And, my wife's a leftist, even though she's kind of like a centrist Democrat, So in America, leftist is just a derogatory term, I think.
Your Overton window is so far to the right that nothing makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
you're an anarchist. They don't understand. What am I going to do? Like to destroy? I'm going to destroy capitalism through violence? Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. If it takes that, sure, but that's not what I want.
That's not the goal.
No. So it's just kind of funny.
For sure.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences between like progressives and leftists here is like liberals and NDP, because the liberals in my lifespan has always been, the liberals are the ones who were supposed to be like right down the middle of the road, a good balance between, the conservatives who were obsessed with the economy and the NDP who, were demonized and accused of being every bad or every pejorative you've associated with the communists, even though they've never actually been quite that far left. But I think in Canada, when you say leftist, you're meaning like NDP and then further left, so NDP, Green, Communist parties, those types. And then when you say like progressive, you're thinking more like liberal. So you nod and you smile and wave at the progressive or at the leftists, and then you go and do business with the conservatives. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, I think from where I sit, I would even put the NDP as like closer to the center, right?
Fair,
because they're still that neoliberal capitalist kind of political bent.
True,
right?
True. Although to their credit, like Jagmeet has done a lot to try to put forward, the message of like universal pharmacare, healthcare, and something that I kind of brought into the notes for the episode is, they proposed a wealth tax on people over $20 million and tried to close up a bunch of the Harper era loopholes that existed. But, that didn't go very well. And
oddly enough, the liberals voted against it the same way the conservatives did.
What? No. What?
That's weird.
That's just unheard of. So we've, let's see, talked a little bit about your show. Oh my goodness, I forgot to update those notes. My apologies. There was something that was really interesting, and I kind of mentioned to you that I was hoping to talk about it because you go into a lot of your circles, and you've got your obviously radical, violent mongering flag going on behind you. You had a recent issue with a forum for communists. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Well, I mean, it's not a great story, but apparently
it's an interesting one.
Apparently, in the R Communist subreddit, anarchists aren't allowed to post or answer questions. So when somebody asked, "Can a lawyer be a communist?" and I was like, "Yeah, you can do that. We need more lawyers who are communists." My answer could not be posted, and it was deleted. And then I got a message from the moderator saying, "Yeah, anarchists aren't allowed to post here." So I was like, "Okay, well then, what am I doing here?"
And it's weird because you actively encourage. You said, "Yeah, no, we should see more communists doing that." You weren't saying "down with communism, anarchy for life," word, and whatever
right.
signs.
Yeah, I am an anarchist. I'm not a state communist, but communism, the philosophy of ownership of everything belonging to everyone. I don't see a problem with promoting that and being an anarchist.
Well, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand.
That's what I would think. State communists are a weird like type of person, though.
Okay, maybe I'm just not as aware. So we know that Tanner himself could not post in r/communism. Okay, so that's established. But like, so you're throwing out saying difference between like state communism and anarcho-communism. Now I've heard a little bit about anarcho-communism, but I've never really dove too deep into either camp because I'm still trying to figure out where the hell my feet land. And I haven't quite gotten that far to the end of the spectrum. So help me here. Do I belong in either side?
Well, it depends. Do you think that the power there should be a state or like that controls everything?
I mean, right now, yes, but when we evolve and become smarter and less primitive, I think we could handle a little less of a daddy voice or a big brother going on around us. I think we might be able to be trusted to wear our damn masks and stay inside because there's a health crisis going on. Interesting.
The state communists that I have encountered are generally I call them state communists because too many people are just calling them authoritarian communists. They're the type of people that you might see defending Stalin or saying that Xi Jinping in China is doing a wonderful job. So these are state communists, and I don't like to call them authoritarians because they dismiss you as soon as you do that. But they believe in a very strong state and a very strong military, and often they believe in a very strong police force. And I'm an anarchist, so to me, a cop is a cop. I don't care what color suit he's wearing. It could be a red cop. He's still a cop, and I'm not a fan.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to that larger, broad symbol. And how about this? And I guess, I don't know, I'm trying not to side tangent us, but like, think of it this way, like my political spectrum leans a specific way based on the current times. Yes. My political spectrum actually changes the difference of how our society would evolve or change. And I can use an example. For example, as an anarchist, I'm very against police. I'm against anything that polices it as a state-run government. I believe in community-ran enforcement with a little bit of state backing or Fed backing as needed. And for example, like, I don't think you should get rid of the police force. I think we should redirect what they spend their time on. Like, and I'll give you another example. Here, we can't park in my neighborhood on the street between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. 4 hours, all year round. It doesn't matter. Some of it's a plow thing, because that's when they run the plows. So that makes sense. But they give
street sweepers.
Yeah, yeah, we have those too. But they give you a $5 ticket, and so for example, last Saturday and Friday, my buddy came over. He got drunk, had to spend the night at my house. Friday night, he goes out, moves his car. It's about 3 a.m. Cop goes, "Oh, you're pulling it in. I won't give you a ticket. Just consider it a warning." Young pup leaves, comes back the next night, sees 2 cars out front of my house. He's got another buddy over drinking, and we're going outside to pull the cars in because we finally figured out, oh shit, you got to move the cars in. And he wrote my buddy a ticket for $5. He's like, "I already told you, you should have listened." And it's like, oh, come on, man. Like, I mean, you're literally going to spend 40 minutes of your time, you're that bored, to issue a citation. Now, I live in a very, medium scale, upscale neighborhood. So, like, I mean, we're a historic district, but still, for Christ's sake, I mean, I don't have all these things out in my yard. My house looks decent. I'm not missing too much siding. But, like, that's why I don't believe in long story short, that's why I have a hard time with cops, because there's a waste of taxpayer dollars. There's a waste of all these other things. We don't have fire people that patrol the streets. Like, they don't patrol the streets going, "Is there a fire? Oh, they got a fire in the backyard. I better sit over here and wait." Come on.
Literally looking for people to turn into criminals.
Yeah. And in my neighborhood, the worst thing they can find is, drunks walking from the bar home, which can happen because you can walk to the bar from my house. And then cars parked on the street, or drunk drivers. You could probably find drunk drivers, but they're out there doing that versus what do we spend our tax money on? But if we created a community systems and worked, and again, my community probably doesn't need it at first. They need to go into Grand Rapids, Michigan, and deal with it, into Detroit and deal with it, because they need to get rid of the systematic racism. But if they did those things, my position would move a little bit farther to the right, saying, okay, once we have these communities in place, I'm still okay with the police being here. I just want them redefined and out of everyday life unless it's absolutely necessary.
I think that's fair. I tend to be of the mindset where I view the world in terms of end goals, right? So end goal, I don't want any police. I want a world where that's not necessary. But even in that world, there would end up being situations where you would need somebody who could handle somebody who was out of control, perhaps, like whether that's a social worker type person who's dealing with a mental health break, or people who can deal with drug overdoses. There's going to be necessary people in these roles. It's just not police.
Well, and it shouldn't be policed in the first place, right? Because, I mean, you can't have somebody who's supposed to be judge, jury, and executioner roaming the street. I mean, we don't have Judge Dredd roaming around. And, I mean, responding to a domestic disturbance calls, I've had friends who were involved in those, and, the police show up and they're literally just there to show force and separate and simply act as a physical deterrent, not a party to help rebuild and restore and heal what's going on. I mean, yes, odds are separating the two, domestically disturbing parties is probably for the best, but, just letting them or just, showing force and be like, "Oh, you guys got to be separate, blah, blah, blah." And now you're going through the legal system instead of, okay, well, this is what's going on. This is the problem. How can we move forward? How can we, rebuild the situation? Sorry, Tanner brought up a great question here that was commented on our Facebook feed from Lawrence there. And he says, what practical ways do you currently practice the idea that property belongs to everyone? In other words, do you not believe you actually own property?
Well, I mean, I don't actually own any property. not in the property sense. Like, I own items, but personal items personal property is not the same as private property, which is a distinction that anarchists and communists often make when we're talking about. Nobody says that we have to all share a toothbrush, but maybe we shouldn't have. Maybe we should have transit systems or like car sharing systems, so nobody actually has to own a car, and that would reduce the number of cars on the road, and just stuff like that. I mean, technically, right now, I own a car under the current legal system, but yeah, if we actually ever had a change in our society, then that would be great. As far as what I do in a practical way in my day-to-day life, I mean, I give what I can to those that I know need it, and that's all I can do at this point.
Well, I think, and I guess I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit, because there's some things where I understand that mentality, right? But I also empathize with that other side that, you know, like, I own a house. Right. And I would not want somebody to walk into my house and say, well, because we all own it, I'm not going to live with you. Even if they were non-harmful. Like, I get some of the fears. And so, like, I think, like, on my side, the answer is not that property, nothing belongs to you. I think the idea is that we figure out a way to limit self-wealth, right? So let's just say you had a $500,000 wealth concept, right? And this might blow people's mind because that's not a lot of money, but it is to a lot of other people. Like, people making 30 grand a year have a $500,000 cap. Like, they'll
never hit that.
Yeah, they'll never hit that. You know, just like in my world, I'll never see $1 million ever. Like, it's just never a thing that's going to happen unless stocks really go good for me. And I'm not even putting very much money in. You know, I didn't do the whole GameStop thing, so I didn't make any money. But
a lot of people lost money on that too.
Exactly, yeah. And so the idea is, and I'm not saying 500 is the key word. I'm saying is, what do we do to limit wealth and property distribution? How do we remove capital, or not capitalism, but corporations from being people? Because that's a thing in America. And those are my two cruxes of it. Because, like, if you own 7 houses, you really
don't need 7 houses. Yeah.
I mean, not to be a dick, but just like, and I say this, like, Kobe O'Brien, what's his house worth, right? You know?
Yeah. No.
You know, does he need that big of a house? Maybe. Is it, you know, because he can spend the money, he's spending the money. But you don't really need that big of a house. You know, I understand, again, the privacy, because he's a celebrity. Should these people be able to be afforded a different status of privacy than you and me? And that's a different debatable question. Yeah. Because if we just didn't have celebrities, we wouldn't have this fucking problem.
Exactly.
I don't think you can get away from that in our current society's mentality, let's say.
Yeah, we have a long way to go.
Yes. And people idolize things. I mean, and again, for Christ's sake, look at Bernie Sanders. He's idolized. And some of the people that follow him are almost as distasteful as Trump supporters. Period.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
I don't know what's the Bernie Sanders of Canada. I don't think we've ever had that. I want to know who the Bernie Sanders of Canada is, and Keith, you need to get him on the show. I want to talk to the Bernie Sanders of Canada.
Actually, I don't know about the Bernie Sanders per se, but I can think of a politician who I think might be actually worthwhile trying to see if we could score an interview with her. I think she'd be worth it. Janice Irwin of the NDP in Alberta, but I don't even think she's in Calgary. I'd have to look into that. She clapped back at the PC government and basically called them out for how poorly they've handled this, and that they've spent more time trying to push their own agenda than actually dealing with everything that's been going on with COVID, which I thought was just fantastic. It was beautifully done. But yeah, Cory, who do you think that would be?
I actually don't know if we have one really. Like the thing about Canadian politics.
Liberal? Is it 'cause you're too liberal? Is this like a Canadian conundrum?
Canadian politics isn't dynamic. There's almost nothing interesting. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, she's not quite as distinct, but maybe like Elizabeth May, but she just doesn't have the same charisma.
Yeah.
See, and
I don't know.
I don't care as much about the charisma aspect, right? I'm just saying is who's the populist that's pushing progressive leftist policies. That's not crazy and insane, right? Because Bernie is a little out there for a lot of people, honestly. For our general public, obviously, because he couldn't win the fucking, general election. But
yeah,
at the moment, I don't think we have a left, like a populist on the left like that. Like we have a variety of much smaller figures who are along the same philosophical lines that have run for various party positions in the Green Party and or the NDP. Jagmeet Singh is as close as we're going to get at this time, I think. But I mean, still think
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
I just have a raging man crush on him, so.
Well, that's fair.
It's just,
he's a beautiful man.
Oh, he's unbelievably, like, just unreal. And he's so witty too. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go down that road and just, just fanboy a little bit.
Okay, so if there isn't, let's get into Canadian politics for a second, right?
Ooh.
And if there isn't a Bernie Sanders, and I guess for the audience, like just trying to depict the two difference of political opinion. I know you guys have to report to the Queen and all, so I mean, there's that. But besides that thing, so you're telling me that there's a few more options that the majority of the people are more middle of the road, and your extremist groups are not to the same standard as America. And I'm gonna cite this with before Trump was in power, the Republican Party was not as outrageous about certain types of things, right?
Right.
So think of it pre-Trump, because we're almost gonna probably see a split of some sort. I don't see the Republicans backing another Trump-like figure, honestly. So think of it that way. So if you take American politics, we have a 1.1%, maybe 2% Libertarian Party that gets votes, right? And we have a Green Party that usually gets less than 1%, and that's usually our progressive party. And our Libertarian Party is our very pro-capitalism, anti-government established, party. And that's our percentages in our mix. And the most loud until Trump came really was the libertarians screaming to say, why can't we have a better Republican Party? So how relate this to Canadian terms for me?
Okay. Yes. I think we could do that. I just pulled up the breakdown of the last federal election just to kind of give a hint.
Okay.
Because we would have the Liberals and the Conservatives, which I think federally speaking, like those two are the equivalent of the Republicans and Democrats. What do you think?
The Liberals would be your Democrats and the Conservatives would be your Republicans. Your old school Mitch McConnell type Republicans. Maybe slightly less capitalist, because we still have nationalized health care.
That's true.
But yeah, I guess that's still kind of the equivalent, I guess.
And then like they had their Green Party. Where did you say they were at, Tanner?
Our Green Party always comes in less than 1%. So,
okay.
That's probably comparable to our Green Party.
Yeah. Ours doesn't, we have a few figures that have been pretty like Ralph Nader, for example, was a very, very prominent, progressive, right? And he's not really that progressive, but he was the most progressive. But once he's out of the party, they haven't had a lot of success on a populist side the same way he had. And I'll say I voted for Ralph when I was very young versus John Kerry, because I hated John Kerry so much. And I was young and idealistic,
That's fair.
Adorbs. Well, if we lump our NDP and Green parties together, and we're going to completely forget the Bloc Québécois because they only represent one province.
Yeah, even though they're still like the third largest party in the country, pretty much.
Yeah, which always amazing. Well, yeah, I mean, Quebec does have like almost a third of the population, or a little over a third of the population, which is weird to think about.
Yeah.
So for the sake of argument and comparison, we'll lump NDP with Green together. And in our last election, they actually had about 22% of the vote. Which is it's refreshing to see. And I mean, they, or was that, or 20% of the seats? Okay. Nope, it's a vote. Sorry, I didn't quite understand the breakdown of the numbers I was looking at in the chart here. And then we have the People's Party, which were my favorites to watch because they are the Gary Johnsons of Canada. They just say it in an accent.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I don't know if you watched the leadership debate. It was the first time I had watched one, and I did a breakdown for the show. And watching Maxime antagonize Scheer was just the highlight reel for me.
Yeah, I only watched the highlights of it. I was not. I didn't want to have to watch Andrew Scheer and Maxime Bernier.
If you have a dark sense of humor, that was perfect. Because like just you could see Shears was just like so uncomfortable anytime Bernier talked to him, because Bernier was like, you call yourself a conservative, but here you are doing this, that, and this, unlike a conservative and more like a socialist. And there's Shear going, Trudeau's a poopy head. Yeah, see, poopy head. Yeah, this guy. And that was like all he could do, and it was so embarrassing for him, and it was great. So they actually only had like 1% of the vote too. So that comparatively speaking, the weird uncles who wear khakis and everybody only sees at big holiday gatherings because everybody else is uncomfortable around them otherwise. So they only make up 1% of the vote.
They would be like our Trump party, which is.
See, and it's weird to think because we almost had Kevin O'Leary, and he was Trump without the personality, and accusing Trump of having a personality is saying something big. He's actually a semi-successful business person in comparison to Trump, who is like a multiple failed business person. Yeah, so I mean, at least we could have said that, if O'Leary had won.
If something had happened. If something bad had happened.
Yeah. I never understood why he didn't really make it. Was it scandal that forced him out of the leadership race?
I think, didn't he drop out before it actually came to a vote? I think he just lost interest. Or maybe it was, there was something about a boat, I think. I can't remember.
I like that. Let's see here. The internet's great. It's great having the internet. I can answer my questions in real time. I just have to stall long enough to find my answer.
Just riff.
That's asking me to do a lot with very, very limited brain power. Front runner in the polls that time, but dropped out, citing a lack of support in Quebec, which is pathetic because really nobody's going to get support in Quebec unless they're Bloc Québécois.
Pretty much, yeah.
So that was weird, but that's okay. Yikes! Yeah, Canadian politics. It's semi-boring though.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the way we used to refer to it was we'd say that our conservatives were like the Democrats, the liberals were like left of that, and then anything else like the NDPs and the Greens, everything a little bit farther left. I mean, we're just our Overton window in Canada is just farther to the left than in the US. But things have shifted a little bit over the last little while, like because we adapt to the culture of the United States so much. Then
why do you do that? I mean, you don't have a Boris Johnson, so there's always that. Like at least you don't have Boris Johnson. Like I'm actually very surprised they did not evict his ass out of England and just send him directly into Canada. They're like, hey, your guys' accents are close enough. You get him. He's yours. The queen dictated this.
Yeah.
Well, that's how that
works, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know how monarchy is nonsense. I don't know how it works.
Well, all right. So I have a question, right? Because you are a leftist, right? So you obviously fall outside of this normal reign of politics, even in your own country.
Yeah.
I could tell you based in my life that Justin Trudeau right now would be even better than a Joe Biden. I can't say he would be as good as a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren. But I will tell you that between some of the imagery, the fact that I don't see him pushing large oil and war deals, those are two positive things. And he pushes the social norms in accepting LGBTQA rights, right?
Yeah,
we don't get that.
Yeah. He puts on the show of progressivism. He's a feminist. He kneels at Black Lives Matter rallies. He'll march in Pride marches. But then he goes and he'll buy a pipeline for private industry and force it through indigenous lands. And he doesn't start wars, but he always will support the United States if they are in one. Stuff like that. We're an imperial country. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, they supported Juan Guaido in Venezuela over Nicolas Maduro, despite the fact that Nicolas Maduro had won the election, because it serves our interests, much like imperial United States does. So, so there's, I mean, he's a neoliberal capitalist prime minister, just like Joe Biden.
All right. So what? Okay. So you're saying that because he supports the U.S. when we make very very conservative choices, right? And I get that, but what about spending cuts? What about taxation? I mean, does he support large capital works? Does he support is he big into oil? Again,
Yes.
he's not fighting overseas, but if he's into oil, then it's kind of, now we lose the green aspect of it. I mean, I wish I could put like a little picture card of Trudeau and all the progressive things, and then I could just go, nope. Yep, exactly. I'm not that good with this system.
He talks a really good game, and he's very politically adept. Like, he's a very clever person. It's unfortunate that he also just happens to support like the status quo and I mean, he is big into oil. He was really embroiled in a big controversy this year, in 2020, because he gave a contract to a company that he just happened to be friends with the owners, and his mom worked for them or something. Like, it was this big deal because of the insider nepotistic training. Then he gives this giant contract to his buddy, basically. And I mean, compared to Trump, it was not news at all.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of that can change though, right? Because as Trump has not really made a splash anywhere in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, roughly, that could change. I think it depends on how long he stays silent. But I'll be honest, even before Trump, Trudeau never, this stuff didn't come out. If I wasn't friends with Buddy, I wouldn't know some of these things at all. Right. Honestly. Because the news cycle doesn't pick it up. And then, that opens up a whole nother can of worms, right? Why is the news segments not picking it up? And I could argue that there's certain times you have to side with other countries, whether it's a progressive thing or not, right? And I understand the logic in that. But if he doesn't check the other boxes, right, it's illogical. And like last week we talked about was it Norway, Keith? That's who we talked about. That had
Sounds about right.
Yeah, they essentially have all of these stocks and bonds, and they play the market. That's how they pay for their socialism. And it's like, well, so they're using capitalism to pay socialism. What the fuck? Like, I get it, you got to do it, but come on, like, let's not pretend to be progressive then, you know?
Yeah, you're still profiting off of the exploitation of the labor force.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
Probably third world countries. And, not that, okay, I don't like the term third world countries, developing countries.
Yeah.
But, yeah. That's because actually Norway, I don't think, is like socialist. They have really strong social safety nets, right? Mm-hmm. They have a good social programs, but they don't have a system where the workers themselves are in control of the means of production.
Yep. And
they are not friends with Marx.
I don't know. So where do we go from here, Keith? I mean, is there so like
well,
you're telling me he's not worth two shits. That's what I'm hearing.
That's how I feel.
I mean, well, the funny thing is like I'll freely admit I voted for the Liberal Party in the last federal election. As much as I want to vote my conscience, I know that my conscience ain't gonna do shit if I vote that way. Especially because I live in Alberta, and federally speaking, the party that I wanted to win, my beautiful, beautiful Jagmeet Singh, would not have stood a chance. My vote really wouldn't have gone towards supporting a party that stood a chance at maybe, possibly, kind of, maybe eking out just a little bit of a head of Conservative. It didn't. But the Liberal Party was the party that stood the best chance on the federal level. However, in the provincial level, NDP, that was the party to vote for if you didn't want to vote Conservative, because they could have taken that seat. So admittedly, I did have to vote, and I swallowed my pride, and I did vote for the Red Party, the Liberals.
I also voted Liberal in my area. I had a chance of having the only non-conservative seat in Parliament. Keith, you might know who Ralph Goodale is. He was running in my area, and he's won for a very long time. He's won over and over and over again. But even still, he lost this time, and we had 0 non-conservative seats in Saskatchewan. So apparently it doesn't matter what my politics are.
Yeah, no kidding. Just trying to find, because I think Alberta was almost exactly the same, although I think it may have been in Edmonton that we had one parliamentary riding that had a NDP vote. Goodness gracious, I already had this up and still end up losing my damn window. Carry on talking without me, because I'm just distracted and I'm going to derail everything and waste a lot more time than necessary. There we go, 2019. So let's break this down by Alberta. So it was in Edmonton where we had the only non-conservative riding in Alberta. And it was just like this one small riding. Everywhere else, it was completely blue. Even half of BC was blue, and that's always kind of shocked me. But I guess Albertans go deep enough into BC that we kind of corrupt.
They have a lot of rich people in BC, so they vote Conservative. They tend to vote Conservative because they don't want to be taxed, and
they don't.
And various other issues. But
we're without Tanner for a few minutes here.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Tanner.
Yeah, I was looking at Ralph Goodale there. Okay, well that's okay. We've still got almost 20 minutes to keep, talking about the complicated relationship that we have with our prime minister, and like you said, he's a great showman. And I think that frustrates me because one of the biggest critiques, of course, is make Trudeau teach drama again, and it's like, yeah, okay, he taught drama, big friggin' whoop,
I don't know if I've cursed on this show. I don't know what your policy is, but there are stickers.
Go right the hell ahead.
Okay, so the common refrain in Saskatchewan and Alberta is "fuck Trudeau."
Yep.
And it's from the right. It's a terrible, I don't know. They're idiots. And I can't take them seriously because they put "fuck Trudeau" on their phone cases and their truck stickers on their truck. And they do this over and over again, but they have no real arguments. They have no idea about how to improve things. All they know is that he's not on their team and their team portrayed him as a villain. Therefore, he sucks. But from the left, we can actually say, like, he's not improving the lives of working people. He talks about it. We have no supports from, like, compared to the US, we have had a lot of support during the pandemic. But those supports ended, and then they became things where they were means tested, and people who didn't get them or who got them without the right criteria are now having to pay those back. And there's I'm just going on a bit of a rant here, but it's like there's not to be insulting, but I don't want to be comparing ourselves to the United States. We can do better. We have to do better, and we have no support from our government currently. Like the unemployment rate here, at least, is higher than it's been throughout the entire pandemic. Like, it's actually higher now than it was in April, and we still have no supports. And we're too reliant as a country on oil because that's been a major driver, and somehow we forgot to diversify. And this is all stuff that falls on the heads of our elected leaders.
Absolutely. Yeah. Alberta is currently, and I think
I hope that made sense.
Yeah, a good portion of this is also because of COVID. Our unemployment rate is up as well. But I mean, even pre-COVID here, one of the things that I'm looking at is unemployment had already started going up in early last year.
Because the oil was not where they wanted it.
Yep, exactly. So let's see, the NDP. When did the NDP take power here in Alberta? What the hell? Anyways, so before the Conservatives took the province back, the unemployment rate was down right around 6.3%, and then it gradually started creeping back up again, and then it was up over like 7.5%. A year ago, and now it's more than doubled. It's at almost 16%. It went to 16% in June, and I mean now it's at like 10.7% in Alberta. But that was what our Conservatives ran their campaign on, was we're gonna get back to work and this, that, and the other. But what Kenny wasn't saying was that he was also really not going to be doing anything to help create jobs. All he was going to do is he gave billions of dollars in tax breaks to big companies, and then was it Encana up and took 10,000 jobs out of the country that, like, within days of getting billions of dollars in tax breaks. So how exactly is that helping get Albertans back to work? And
it's just like the thing about the support for the pandemic and unemployment is that a lot of the money went to bosses. They went to companies, and then those companies continued to lay people off. Like Bell Media just laid off something like 10,000 employees. Like after getting a giant payout, like it's just like the United States. Like, it's no different.
Yeah. No, it's really not. We just have a prettier face running the show. And like, less creepy.
Yeah.
Well, I think, so that kind of leads into changes you would make, right? So we talk about these things all the time, right? And I was actually going to ask you, did you vote Liberal, Cory? I was going to ask you that. I know how you did. I didn't know how you voted. And I wanted to have that conversation a little bit too. So you can't be that much of a leftist if you at least voted for your conservative Democratic Party.
I did the calculus that we do, right? Because we're afraid of what the right is going to do. We're afraid of what's going to happen if the Conservatives get into power. And as long as that keeps happening and the other powerful party is the Liberals, we'll keep voting them in.
Yep.
We need somehow to get like an assurance, a poll numbers that's going to say like the NDP might actually stand a chance.
Yeah.
But until that happens, yeah.
Well, and I think I have like two challenges, I guess, per se, right? One, how do you as an individual, and this is our show this year is dedicated to having this one specific conversation of how do I continue to move the Democratic Party in America left, right? So that I can continue to vote for them on the national scale, to help maintain not getting another Trump in office. You know, I mean, getting a conservative office is bad, but we couldn't even get rid of Mitch McConnell. So for fuck's sake, we're still behind the eight ball here, folks. But so challenge number one to you is okay, if we look at this, how do you feel we'll call it short-term, mid-term, and long-term games need to be played to move that needle farther? And then the second, thing I have, and this is a little bit more of a caveat, right? Because in business, I work in manufacturing a lot and warehousing. That's my background. And when we move the needle, the goal is not to move the needle from point A to point B as fast as you can all the time.
Right.
So because large changes usually create larger headache. And I can give an example. When I worked for a furniture manufacturing company, they said, your department's going to find $200,000 of savings this year. And when one of the changes we requested, they said, nope, that's way too much change. Go back to the drawing board and do it this way. Because it would have cost them, probably almost $200,000 to get that same set of savings. But year over year over year, the returns would come faster. But if I made slow incremental changes, it would save them enough money every year where they didn't have to actually spend out of pocket, and the return for them would be higher each year to hit their stupid goal of X amount of dollars of savings. They didn't care about long term. They only cared about short term. So in politics, we all operate in the same mode, right? Like if we move too far too fast, we could upset a balance. We don't know. I don't see it, but it's probably there. It's probably there.
Yeah. It's important to be pragmatic on some level, right? Like we got to be. We have a whole. It doesn't matter how much to the left I am. We have a whole society that isn't as far left as me. Mm-hmm. So I have to work within the systems that exist and with the people that I work with in order to make any progress. As far as what do I think? Sorry, what was the first thing? Like it was like
the first. Sorry. So the first thing is if you take the second thing out of it, right? We got to move incrementally. What's your short-term, middle-term, and long-term goals? Like, what do you see as being for Canada? The best moves that you guys could make to help move that needle from, we'll call it centrist liberal to, we'll even call it democratic or progressive liberal, right? Whichever one you want to say.
I mean, if we're talking about how do I get the politics that I believe in pushed forward,
yes,
then I think that part of it needs to be that we need more public leftists. We need more people and more parties and more participation by people on the far left. We just started actually an all communist party here in Saskatchewan. And now, like, that was a thing that I've been looking for the last 3 years. And now we have one. And as this thing grows, then we can, perhaps become more active in the actual mainstream parties. As far as so on the short term, I'd say we need to just get more faces out there, more people talking about our politics. In the mid range, I'd say we want to get involved in electoral politics on some level. If we can get into existing parties, then we can do that. If we need to create our own parties and get and campaign and get donations to try and build a following, then we can do that. And long term, I want an overthrow of the capitalist regime.
Viva la revolution.
I think that we have to be realistic too. Like, I know a lot of my fellow anarchists are really, they talk a lot about revolution, and they really just hate the idea of incremental gain. And I know that it feels like incremental gain often just doesn't work, because you take 2 steps forward and it's 3 steps back. And as long as you're playing this game with the right and centrists, then you're always moving backwards, or you're staying stagnant. But I think that we are making progress, and I think that the more we talk about this, the more progress we can make.
Fair enough. So, I think the big thing here, right, Cory, and I know we have a time constraint, so I want to be respectful of your time tonight. But I think the big thing here is I get the idea that we shouldn't be as scared about non-incremental change. But what I would always pose, and this is because this is where it gets a little bit dirtier, right? I'm a statistics guy. I'm a guy that goes, prove it. Right. And I'm not saying I'm going to give you a position of power to prove it. I'm saying, and this is the sad thing, because if I gave you the position of power and you fail, it harms a lot of people. Right.
Yep.
You can actually harm a lot of people. And this is a big debate in philosophy and politics for years and years and years. Right.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. And that's why incremental changes is very big in politics. But you're telling me I can move faster. So the idea becomes, and this is the sad thing, is how do we get capitalism out of this? Because if we look, for example, Elon Musk is a shit human being for the most part, but he has done some really good things. For example, he's launched a satellite business to give people internet. That's positive. What is he doing with everybody's data behind the scenes? If he collects it, I don't know. I can't guarantee you he's doing that. Is it really good that we have a $1 billion corporation owning satellites in our orbiting system?
I think he's just sending our browsing history back to his home planet.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, though, giving internet to people in rural areas and allowing them to test this internet for free to see if it helps benefit their lives, that's huge. That's big.
Yeah.
That's where the fuck's our goddamn government doing this? That's what I'm saying. Why don't we put Comcast and AT&T and T-Mobile out of business and do this? But we don't. So how do we change that then? How do you go about this? If we need money to make change and I'm not going to give you a political position of power, how do you as an individual create an example of bigger incremental change than what we're seeing right now?
How do I create, like, you want some kind of evidence that that a bigger change than, say, what's happening right now will be beneficial?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Tough.
I mean, yeah, it is. It is.
Move.
Especially like off the top of my head.
Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics, baby.
But I think that if one looks, I think that we can find evidence for like things like higher tax rates on wealth and higher distribution of income and higher spending on various products by the government. Like you say, like maybe we can't put out TELUS and Bell and all these companies out of business tomorrow, but if we tax them and the government starts doing this as a service to its citizens, I mean, the step is you need the political will to actually take that step. Nobody's going to be hurt by taxing Elon Musk more.
Nope.
So that's a good first step, I think.
And I think that's right. So I give you the hard questions. The idea is and I say this very, sad because I don't, sometimes like Hannah doesn't challenge me aggressively enough. I'm the guy usually that's the far leftist in the show. So when I have a guy that comes on that basically said he's almost a communist and he likes the Communist Party, I got to challenge you a little bit because it's like, whoa, hold on, man. I don't even say I'm a communist, for fuck's sake. But I think it's important, though, to challenge that line of thinking, right, Cory? Because I think those are the questions that we get from the middle of the road people, right? Like my wife and I disagree with whether you should punch a Nazi or not. That's a fact. I think you should always punch a Nazi. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care about the ramifications. That's just me. My wife is, a little bit more on the idea that that's probably not the most positive thing that can happen, and you understand it gives them recourse.
She's also not wrong there. Like, no, she's not wrong. It's not the most positive thing that can happen. But I'm still going to punch a Nazi. You are, and I'm still going to punch a Nazi. So, like, I don't know what to... I feel like we should just, like, have a video of punching Nazis right now. That's what I feel. I feel I should find that, but I'm not going to do that. But you understand my point, though. Like, Cory, we, as fellow socialists, as people that are very against capitalism and this very slow momentum, we need to be able to come up with how can we model things. And I think your example is a very ingenious way, because the amount of harm that it does is nullified. Yeah. If I take half of his wealth, half of Bill Gates' wealth, half of, who's the guy, Jeff Bezos, right? Yeah. If we take these people's wealth away, can they still afford their 70 houses that they have and their 200 cars and their 14 mistresses or whatever the fuck they spend their money on? Their cocaine. Maybe they all have fancy cocaine that we just don't have. Maybe they have like gold-laced cocaine.
It's like gold-laced cocaine. Or maybe it's like somebody's like deconstructed it so it doesn't have the negative effects on your body, but has a positive effect. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
They've got the limitless drug.
There you go. Yeah. Or maybe they have technology like that Tenet movie where they can like reverse things, and they can have reverse ice cubes. Yeah. Reverse ice cubes is genius. Like, maybe I would be a Bill Gates if I could get reverse fucking ice cubes for my whiskey. I don't know. Only certain one.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's both important to talk about the end goals, like a utopian society with no capitalism and no police, and also talk about short-term goals, like you say, like where we just need to get somebody with the political will to tax these billionaires, at least so that we can start funding some actual societal good.
Yeah. Nope. And I think that, like I said, I think that's an extremely valid point. And I think that's a great first step if that's, what we have to do. And if you listen to American politics or whatever, that's what you hear a lot of. And you get more buy-in from the centrists on that. As long as you start specifying a dollar amount, you almost got to hit that $500,000 fucking dollar amount before people, like my mother-in-law, or my ex-mother-in-law, and I argued, she's a huge Biden Hillary supporter, all this other crazy stuff. And, I was like, yeah, we should tax the rich. She's like, well, only certain rich people, anybody that makes over 500K. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm saying anyone who makes over 100K should get taxed higher. What the fuck are you talking about?
That's the whole point of a progressive tax.
Yeah. Like, she's like, well, what if you ever make 100K in a year? I was like, well, when I get to that level, if I ever do, I'm probably okay with them taxing me a little bit more.
Then I will pay those taxes.
Yeah. I mean, I've always paid my damn taxes anyway, so, whatever, but I don't know. Anyway.
The trouble is that you need a system where if you are a person who makes 100K, and then the next year you somehow lose half of that, you don't starve, you don't lose your house, you don't lose your car, you can still exist.
Yep. And I agree. I think that's it. I think that's what's missing in that discussion, because people ignore that fact of things. They really do. I don't know. Well, I know you had an hour limit set, so
yeah, I better get going.
Yep. So before you leave, though, you got to plug where everybody can find you, when your next shows are, how often they release, and if they can, how much communist anarchist cookbooks you're gonna come up with in the next year.
Oh, damn that. Well, I do, like I say, my Saskatchewan Politics show comes out every week. I'm in the middle of processing one I just recorded yesterday. My that's called From Many People's Strength. My my solo show, my interview show is called The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist. I think it's important to keep my skeptical roots. I was in skepticism for almost a decade, and I ran a show for 6 years doing skeptical stuff. So I have to stay true to that. And I'm just about to release a new episode talking about community care and mutual aid and what we can do for our fellow people in need right now. So that's coming out right away. And you can find that at anchor.fm/skeptical leftist. My Saskatchewan politics is anchor.fm/from many peoples. And every 2 weeks I do a show with a panel of great people who are much smarter than me. And that's available at skeptarchy.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cory, for joining us. For everybody listening to the show, the notes will have all of the links to his shows, as well as the links to some of the articles we were referencing. I know normally we bring the articles up, but it was too much going on for me to bring that up tonight. So I do have
I'm
all
a little
the links.
erratic.
I do have the links in the description, though, so you can still check out some of the articles we were referencing when we were talking about how much Cory is a fanboy of Trudeau and how he thinks he should become Emperor of Canada. So the rest of his life. We'll clone him when he dies. It'll be like Palpatine.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks for
Thank you
being
so
on,
much
Cory.
for joining us, Cory.
All right, folks. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to the Cellar Door Skeptics for having me on. I hope that I can go back and chat with them some more about anarchism and communism and all that good stuff. Remember to share the show with your friends and on social media. Thank you to everyone who supports this show on Patreon. Every dollar I get makes it so that I can feed my family and keep a roof over our head. So it's really, really appreciated. If you can contribute or want to contribute, you can do that at patreon.com/skepticalleftist, or you can send me money at paypal.me/brainstormpodcast. If you can't contribute financially, that is fine. A 5-star rating and a review on your podcast app of choice or on one of the podcast review sites like Podchaser would be great. If you want to find more from me, then make sure to check out my Linktree at linktree/skepticalcory. You can find all my social media stuff there, as well as links to my other shows, which include Skeptarchy, which is a panel show I do with some very smart people, From Many People's Strength, which is a podcast about Saskatchewan politics, and The Feminist Family, which I do with my partner. My Twitter is @HardcoreSkeptic, and my Facebook page is The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist. Or you can send me a friend request at facebook.com/CJBrainstorm. I do accept most friend requests. Thank you so much for listening or watching, and remember that the truth does seem to have a left-wing bent.